Hey y'all, Scott here. I've been working on my impression of Nintendo DSiWare. Watch, why the f was I born?
Buying the Nintendo DSi was my first instance of being an idiot. Oh, made it that far. Let's be fair, if Nintendo offered you a new design of something you already had with superfluous additions and crippling feature removals for nearly $200, you have to take advantage of that opportunity. This is the last time they'll do it this week. I'm not made of stone. Released on November 1st, 2008 in Japan and April 5th, 2009 over here in North America, the DSi was the third version of the Nintendo DS, a handheld that was already everybody's favorite bundle of atoms. The DS and DS Lite took the world by storm, all while being severely impaired. You can't tell me to reset the system after changing the clock and expect me to think everything's okay. Hell, you couldn't even remove a game card from the DS on the menu screen without it freezing. What's the point of having a menu screen then? I think Nintendo developed the system by candlelight. It was completely fair to expect an upgrade. I mean, you look at what the PSP was doing with its user interface and compare that to how the DS didn't even like you going into system settings. Like, I didn't even change anything. So in October of 2008, Nintendo announced that upgrade, the Nintendo DSi, hell-bent on being an actual system. The future was here, and it was $169.99. That's all right, let's get this over with. Scott was nearly 12 when he got his DSi at launch. That's why we shouldn't trust him. This was the first system I went out of my way to purchase by myself. I scrounged up the money and traded in my Nintendo DS Lite to help pay for it. I have no idea where I got that cash at that age. I guess the mutual fund worked out. But man, the thought I bought this and not something else like a PSP, an Xbox 360, PS3, anything but a revision of a handheld I already owned. But the DSi not only had one camera, it had two.
Son of a bitch.
There is a lot more going on with this system. One of my favorite things about the original DS was the inclusion of Pictochat on board. It was like a little extra bonus game you could mess around with on the road trip if the game you brought lost its luster. I didn't even use it as it was intended most of the time, you know, sending messages to friends nearby. I liked making little flip books with the thing. And it felt like Nintendo realized how popular that application was, as the DSi has all kinds of stuff to mess around with. Nintendo DSi camera lets us take pictures and mutilate them. I spent hours with this, just messing around with the special effects and whatnot. Nintendo DSi Sound, likewise, I adored. You could record small sound clips or import your own MP3s with the newly included SD card slot. I mainly just recorded my own sounds and absolutely demolished them. I loved it for tampering with evidence, but overall, it added to the amount of simple fun you could have with the Nintendo DSi without even plugging in a game, mainly because the software library was cut in half. What do you call this?
It was the only cake I had.
The Game Boy Advance slot was removed to maintain portability. Sure, I want to lose weight. I cut off my arm. I guess the new features help outweigh the lack of Game Boy Advance compatibility. At least they did at the time. These built-in apps were loads of fun, and the Nintendo DSi had a much heavier emphasis on internet connectivity, including a web browser built in, Facebook connectivity to upload your camera's pictures, plus the main replacement for the GBA slot, the Nintendo DSi Shop.
Yes, what better way to make up for stripping the compatibility of 1,500 Game Boy Advance games than to give me the ability to play WarioWare Snapped? I can think of a couple. Being able to download games to your Nintendo DS was a massive upgrade. I mean, remember, those original models froze if you looked at them funny. And with the rise of downloadable software on the 360, PS3, Wii, PSP, and especially cell phones, it just made sense to go in this direction. They should have named the games that released on this thing as a good idea. Instead, they named them DSiWare.
I don't know. I get it, it's Nintendo DSi software, combining the two, DSiWare, but they were obviously playing off of the name for Wii Digital Software, WiiWare, then had alliteration going for it. This is just a collection of letters. DSiWare games and applications were pretty much the only thing available on the Nintendo DSi shop, which makes me question why even give them a name like this. If they were offering classic games under the Virtual Console brand like they did with the Wii, I'd get that, you know, separate church and state. But they didn't offer Virtual Console titles here, which I think would have made perfect sense. The Wii Shop channel only offered Virtual Console games from home systems. The DSi Shop could have had retro titles from portables, maybe even Game Boy Advance games to make up for the missing slot. But nope! It was DSiWare games or bust, original downloadable games for the Nintendo DSi. It didn't matter because I was still excited as a kid. Even without wireless internet, I was frothing at the mouth to download some DSiWare stuff. I would wander around the front yard trying to mooch off of the neighbor's internet signal. Convincing my parents to get Wi-Fi was like convincing them I needed a lung transplant. I should know because Wi-Fi won out. But even beforehand, we were on vacation and the hotel we were staying at had free Wi-Fi, so I scrambled to test it out on my DSi and oh my god, shitty email! I could browse the web that, play online multiplayer, but most importantly, download software from the Nintendo DSi shop. And thankfully, Nintendo included $10 worth of Nintendo points to download games. Yes, this was still back when video game companies wanted to be cute about buying digital games, with 2,000 Nintendo points equating to 20 bones. Nintendo originally called these points Wii points for use only with the Wii Shop channel, but with the introduction of the Nintendo DSi, you could use the points on either a DSi or a Wii, eventually being renamed Nintendo points. Using a point system might have been a way to avoid you having to give Nintendo a W-2 for paying them so much, but hey, it worked. DSiWare titles range from free to costing 12 bucks or so, and you'd find what you want on the shop by tapping through pages, 2 games at a time. My wife is going into labor, but where's WarioWare? The whole shop's aesthetic was modeled after the Wii Shop channel, and rightfully so. Both of these storefronts felt less like cold corporate marketing schemes and more so pleasant, relaxing elevators and shopping malls. Whenever I visit them, gosh, I should buy something. They even have a fun screen when you're downloading software, much like the Wii, except this one is based off of Super Mario Advance on the Game Boy Advance. That was one big final f*** you to the GBA slot. Unfortunately, the Nintendo DSi shop closed on March 31st, 2017.
Oh?
However, most of the DSiWare games released are available on the Nintendo 3DS eShop. Just looking up DSiWare, well, there they all are. Well, let's take a look at a good chunk of the releases, starting with a launch title for the DSi shop. WarioWare Snapped!
He just lost it!
This was back when WarioWare was the big showcase for a new Nintendo system set of features, so here's a DSiWare title focused on the cameras for $5. WarioWare microgames that focus on using the DSi's camera is an awesome time. I'm also fucking dumb. So Snapped has you line up your body with these outlines via the inner camera, then you play the microgames by moving yourself around. In concept, not bad, but WarioWare games generally have hundreds of microgames, all played at about 5 seconds apiece, getting faster and faster as you progress. It's what makes the series fun. Snapped has 20 microgames that give you about 20 seconds to complete them, with each of the 4 characters only giving you 5 apiece. So we pick Wario and play his microgames, and the only challenge comes from getting the damn thing to work. So it's like playing with the photo booth application on the Mac, right? This isn't like a camera that can sense fear. No, it's just a basic camera, and even saying that's being generous. Thus, the fact they got a game like this to work at all with such horrible cameras, there's something to be said about that. I don't know if it's something good. Back in 2009, this kind of thing was pretty cute. These silly cameras were all the rage, with Photo Booth, like I said, the iToy for PlayStation 2, eventually the Kinect for Xbox 360. It's not like there's no value at all here. There's a free tech demo pre-installed on the DSi. It's just okay. As a $5 downloadable game, it's pretty bad. As a WarioWare game, it's fucking atrocious. You can experience the whole thing in 10 minutes. I've gotten more out of single micro games than actual WarioWare titles than this entire thing. Didn't stop me from enjoying it as a kid. I would play it in restaurants. Jesus Christ, like playing Brain Age wasn't bad enough. How about Dr. Mario Express? This was the other game I bought with my DSi shop credit, coming in at another $5, and this was a much better deal than WarioWare. Express is just flat out Dr. Mario, which you can't go wrong with on the go. I don't know, man. You ever just crack under the pressure of talking about Dr. Mario Express? There's nothing to it. It's just Dr. Mario! Not even a multiplayer mode, either local or online, is included. For $5, it's sort of hard to complain, but I'm gonna try. It's a bit too obvious how little content is in many DSiWare games. I get they're incredibly cheap and supposed to be small and tiny to fit on your system digitally. But still, like, come on, you couldn't have included more in WarioWare Snapped? At least Dr. Mario Express has a good reason to exist. Pop your DSi out, play around a Dr. Mario, throw it back in your pocket. But this entire game is just a downgrade of Dr. Mario Online RX on WiiWare. That game was $10. Why does this one have to be so stripped down? The WiiWare game didn't do anything the DS couldn't do. However, we gotta look at that their subtitle. Express was a term used by Nintendo a lot on DSiWare. Many other games used it to denote this is a smaller version of a game that already exists elsewhere. So Dr. Mario Express was a stripped down version of Dr. Mario Online RX. Brain Age Express, Arts and Letters, Math, and Sudoku were repackaged piecemeal variants of both Brain Age and Brain Age 2. See, in PAL territories, these types of games were called a little bit of, and that's a bit more blunt as what these are. In fact, Nintendo has a pop-up warning when you buy them on the eShop asking, you sure about this? Brain Age Express makes total sense as a DSiWare game though. This is the kind of thing you want on your system at a moment's notice. And it's not like this is just a repackaged version of Brain Age 1 and 2. It has some new puzzles and is mostly just a repackaged version of Brain Age 1 and 2. I can't stress how much I love to get ripped off. These versions were $8 a pop, and each honestly gave you more than enough content for that price. When they were just ripping content from previously released games, that's when you got decent titles on DSiWare. Clubhouse Games Express, a series of certain games from the original DS title. Master of Illusion Express was the same thing. Puzzle League Express was just Planet Puzzle League with less features and modes. Same goes for True Swing Golf Express, being a stripped-down version of True Swing Golf, which I didn't even know was a Nintendo-published DS game. What they don't teach you in school. Then Nintendo took the DS game Electroplankton and divided it up into 10 separate DSiWare games for $2 a pop. I'm starting to get annoyed at this strategy. Like, did Nintendo actually make anything for this? Well, that's where Mario vs. Donkey Kong Minis March Again walks in. Get out. Let's just download it and oh my god! This is the image most see before death. This is a successor to Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2, March of the Minis, and the predecessor to Mario vs. Donkey Kong Miniland Mayhem, which was followed up by Mario and Donkey Kong Minis on the Move. Give up on the subtitles. You're just mixing words around. It's impossible to remember which one is which. The next one they're probably gonna call Mario vs. Donkey Kong Move Minis Move. This game is quite derivative of Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2. Is a Mario vs. Donkey Kong game after all. Is there any fan of this series that goes, no, I like that one? They're all the same, but I guess Minis March Again is an improvement over March of the Minis. I mean, for starters, it's $8 and gives you a comparable amount of content to the physical DS game. Completely original new level designs with some new small tweaks to the flow of the gameplay. Once you tap the mini Marios, they move indefinitely, which makes things more interesting. You have to get them all to the goal while collecting everything, while in its predecessor, you could stop them and move directions. This is just more compelling. Plus you have the level editor, which is basically ripped right out of the last game, but it did give this game an endless amount of content to play through user-created stages. For $8, this was a pretty good deal. It was better than Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2. Well, I think it flat out replaced it. I think everybody can agree this was the definitive Mario DSiWare game. Depending on your stance with Mario Clock. For $2, Nintendo was offering a clock application in case this clock wasn't enough. Yes, this was considered an application, not a game, as some DSiWare titles were just that. This is a tool. You can set an alarm. Mario Clock has to be open for it to go off, dear Christ, but you can set an alarm. It's okay, why would you close it anyways? Couldn't they have included a world clock showing the times from different areas of the world? Like that calendar even, please, God, I've never wanted to see a calendar more in my life. It's frustrating because the sister application, Mario Calculator, which released the same day for the same price, has so much more to it. You can convert units, calculate fun things. Why is this so much more worthy of the $2? Well, why aren't they just a part of the same application? The 8-bit Super Mario Bros. Aesthetic is fun, but doesn't amount to anything more than just funny sounds and being able to control some movement. At least you have a bit of interactivity because, lo and behold, Animal Crossing Clock. Who the hell do you think you are? It's just a static picture, and this was $2 as well. It's the exact same as Mario Clock, but with an Animal Crossing skin, and the same can be said about Animal Crossing Calculator, but these both aren't nearly as compelling as the Mario variants. And that's saying something. They're fucking clocks. The Mario ones have more interactivity. Animal Crossing is the bare minimum, just clocks and calculators with Animal Crossing pictures in the background. Now, you can make your own town tune for the alarm sound in Animal Crossing Clock. Great, not only did I spend $2, I have to supply the alarm sound for them. Nintendo also offered Photo Clock, because what were you expecting me to? The Nintendo Countdown Calendar, Nintendo DSi Metronome, Instrument Tuner.
With the amount of applications Nintendo released on the DSi shop, it makes me wonder why they didn't do more. Like, they could have done a ruler, maybe an email client.
While Nintendo did a few more applications, none was more tantalizing than Flipnote Studio. A free application that allowed you to make flipbook style animations. I was heard! This was an outstanding piece of software. It wasn't too in-depth. I mean, you weren't gonna make a masterpiece on here. I stand corrected. But you didn't have loads of tools and colors, but you didn't need that. It's a DSi application. Give it some slack. This is a toy, and it's so easy and simple to make animations. It's incredible. I used this for hours, recording my own lines, sharing them online via the Flipnote Hatana service. This was the killer app for the Nintendo DSi. Next to Photo Dojo. Oh, hell yeah! Take pictures to put whoever you want in a light fighting game. I used to love stuff like this that put my own creations on a screen where they normally wouldn't be. Photo Dojo was available for free for a short period of time before becoming $2. I don't know, man, I really need a clock. It's barely ankle deep, but for a cheap toy to put whoever you want in a fighting game, it's the most amazing thing I've seen all sentence. This was another I played a ton back in the day. Nintendo knew how to create very simple experiences that kids just eat up.
It's like they're reading my mind. It's like they know what I want. Nintendo, what things do I want next? I was not expecting them to get that right.
More games derived from pre-existing games. Bird and Beans and Paper Airplane Chase both were playable within WarioWare Mega Micro games and were released on their own for $2 a pop. Being high score based games, they worked pretty well here. I think you'd get more playtime out of these than the actual WarioWare game on offer here. 9 Game & Watch games were put out, which I wish they had modern recreations of them like they did in the Game & Watch Gallery series on the Game Boy line. They charged $2 for each, but I would have paid $5 if they had a modern version alongside it. Then there was the Art Style series. Various games are released on either WiiWare or DSiWare. I got Art Style Pictobits back in the day. I still don't know. These games were very simple puzzle games, all with different aesthetics and vibes and gameplay. Again, the only one I ever played was Pictobits because I will take 8-bit sprite fodder over understanding the game any day. And that wasn't all. Nintendo also released a Kappa's Trail, Crash Course Domo, Hard Hat Domo, Pro Putt Domo, Rock and Roll Domo, White Water Domo, Face Pilot, Flame Tail, Lincoln Launch, Looksies Lineup, Metal Torrent, Number Battle, Picture Book Games, Pinball Pulse, Snap Dots, Spotto, Starship Patrol, Touch Solitaire, Trajectile, Escape. Who the f are these guys? Let's not be hasty with criticism though, like any of us spent a day in Spotto shoes. On top of everything we already discussed, Nintendo released quite a lot of completely original DSiWare games. It's just nobody ever talks about them. I think Nintendo went a bit too light with many of their releases here. And most games were one-trick ponies. They were about one thing, doing one thing, and then doing it again for a high score. I understand why they were like this. They had the mentality of downloadable games for the DSi have to be quick, bite-sized games you can play whenever, arcade-like experiences, or just stupid dumb tech demos. Except Looksie's Lineup, that's a sexy tech demo. I mean, there are standouts like Escape, which is a successor to the Japan-only Game Boy game X, the predecessor to Star Fox. The Face Pilot, which was pretty much a Pilot Wings game on DS that you control with your face. I made an accessory. Pinball Pulse is a good pinball game, Touch Solitaire is a bad pinball game. Nintendo's output was pretty large on DSiWare, but inconsequential. Too many of these games felt like afterthoughts with how little there was to them. I understand creating smaller games for DSiWare was Nintendo's philosophy here, but seeing what some third parties were doing just completely put them to shame. The best developer for the platform, bar none, was Way Forward. The flagship DSiWare game was their own Shantae Risky's Revenge. Unlike other games on here, this was an actual game. A sequel to Shantae on Game Boy Color, Risky's Revenge was a huge title here. It was so well designed, beautiful to look at, a great return to a cult favorite series. It was everything. And it showed that downloadable games on the system could be so much more than a cheap thrill. Games that you play for 5 minutes and need a cigarette afterwards. It's only roughly 5 hours long, so maybe shorter than most boxed DS games. Do you ever play Pokemon Dash? Way Forward also released Mighty Flip Champs. Keep thinking that says chimps. Followed up by Mighty Milky Way, 2 really solid puzzle games, which eventually led to Mighty Switch Force. It's unfortunate these games don't get as much recognition as Switch Force 1 and 2, but it just shows how forgotten many DSi releases were. Like, you know, SteamWorld Dig and Heist and Dig 2 and Quest, a pretty popular indie series. The first game was SteamWorld Tower Defense on DSiWare. SteamWorld Tower Defense.
I was the first person to say that this week.
Cave Story was on there. That was the indie darling of the 7th generation of game systems. Just cool to get games like that on the go. DSiWare wasn't a huge breeding ground for indies like future Nintendo platforms were, but at the very least it laid the foundation. It gave various developers another avenue to publish their smaller titles. But there were some big names on here, like Need for Speed Nitro X, stripped down version of a retail game. God damn it. I was gonna say, this is of an impressive quality for DSiWare, and now it's obvious why. It wasn't for DSiWare. Tetris Party Live, the same thing. Combat of Giants Dragons Bronze Edition, oh, great subtitle. Phantasy Star Zero Mini, Plants vs. Zombies, Bookworm, Zuma's Revenge, Bejeweled Twist, these were all games that just cut content from retail releases to sell them for cheaper on DSiWare, and I don't know how to feel about this. Which I need to figure out, what if somebody comes up and asks me on the street? On one hand, hey, it gave more players an opportunity to play certain games. Maybe you just wanted to play the main mode in Plants vs. Zombies rather than all the extra junk. But these games flooded the shop. The fact they had to put disclaimers before you buy to tell you, hey, this ain't anything new. I mean, the whole thing made DSiWare feel like it was full of game demos you had to pay for. If they wanted to put a little effort into games, why not release classics through a virtual console? It makes no sense. Well, some publishers went ahead and put out their classic games anyways. The original Rayman, Earthworm Jim, Dragon's Lair 2, and Space Ace, a version of the Oregon Trail based on the current iPhone app at the time, were all here and accounted for. I like these ports because they give me a glimpse as to what could have almost been. Game Boy games downloadable on the DSi. Hell, throw Game Gear, Neo Geo Pocket, Atari Lynx games in there. And don't tell me the DSi couldn't run them. We're talking Game Boy games, not, I don't know, Prehistoric Man or anything. Oh, you son of a bitch! I would have loved to see more classic content on the shop rather than cut down versions of pre-existing DS software. It's just, what would you rather want? Phantasy Star Zero Mini, a stripped version of an RPG? I don't even know how you do that. Or Dirty Larry. Gosh, that's tough. Let's be fair, there were original games made by big name studios. We got Dragon Quest Wars, which was a Dragon Quest Tactics spin-off developed by Intelligent Systems, the Fire Emblem devs. When a downloadable DSi game is in 3D, my jaw drops. Dark Void Zero is one of the more infamous games released by Capcom in tandem with Dark Void on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. This was mockingly set up as a lost NES prequel to that game, and I think it ended up overshadowing it in many ways. Bomberman Blitz, I will describe like I do most Bomberman games. It's a Bomberman game. Frogger Returns. All right. I've come across this game numerous times on the Wii Shop channel on the PlayStation 3, and then they made a DSi version? Why is it Frogger Returns? When did he leave? This version is very comparable to the consoles. It doesn't have the piss ugly title screen though. So I don't know if it's worse or not.
Outside of those, DSiWare didn't get too awful much. It just got awful much. Shovelware, baby! Look at this. The House Game, 40-in-1 Explosive Mega Mix, 1950s Lawnmower Kids. My Asian Farm, I Spot Japan, Box Pusher. Ah! Spot the difference? DSiWare was full of garbage. Doesn't mean the stuff from actual publishers is much better. The more I dive into DSiWare, the more its existence perplexes me. Like, nobody did anything with it. Nintendo decided to finally care about the service in 2011 by releasing The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords Anniversary Edition after the 3DS came out, and it was only available for a limited time for free. Technically, WarioWare Touch was released as a DSiWare title, only in the 3DS eShop, only through the My Nintendo loyalty program. I only mentioned that so I met my WarioWare Touched quota for the day. And the final DSiWare release was in 2016, Crazy Train. There are some gems on there, but most of the time it was either shovelware or just repackaging games that were already on the DS. Like, why? I'll tell you why, because they're only human. If I ever squirt out Need for Speed Nitro, you bet I'm going in for seconds.